Europe matters, and it matters so far as values, ethics, the enlargement procedure, the processes, the institutions, its people. Today, I have the pleasure to welcome at Prime Analysis Professor Stephanie Laulhe Shaelou, who is a professor of European Law and Reform and head of School of Law at UCLan Cyprus. My name is Dr. Mario Eftimiopoulos, and I'm the CEO of Strategy International, and this is Prime Analysis. Dear Professor Stephanie, welcome at Prime Analysis of Strategy International. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Marius, for having me today. It's a pleasure to be here.
I think there's no better person to discuss about European affairs, European political affairs, European law, reform, institution, and values than yourself. Not because you're an excellent academic and a colleague, but more so because you're directly involved into the discussions of Europe in both its general aspects, but also legal and political and very institutional aspects. The reason of our discussion is multifolded in this case, which I think it is very wise and important to say that a European, French and Cypriot citizen is here in Cyprus, in the corner edge of Europe. Why Cyprus?
Yes, thank you. That's a very nice question, and of course a very interesting question for me. So yes, it's the path towards living in Cyprus permanently and integrated into the Cyprus society is an interesting path. So I'm originally from France. I'm from Paris. I'm a French citizen. I was raised and born and raised and educated in Paris. Always had, that tendency to look into European affairs, even from a young age. I remember not being able to vote for the Maastricht referendum.
Really?
Because I wasn't 18 yet, and I remember being really upset about this. So it was with me since then. And
the French have a very deep understanding of Europe and the European values and ethics.
That's right. And of the direct way of actually embracing and empowering yourself into the European Union. Mm-hmm. So voting for a referendum on the Maastricht Treaty, for example,
yes,
was an example of direct citizens' participation and empowerment. So I basically wanted to study law, but not only law. So I basically did a double degree, law, but also linguistics. So excellent. I did also German and English.
Hence the very good accent in English as well.
Thank you. Well, then German was actually my first
Even
foreign
better.
language. So
excellent.
it was in English.
And you're Greek, I may say so.
Yes, so that hence the Greek as well. And so I knew I was destined, or I knew I would at some point end up, not necessarily, as far as Cyprus, but definitely within European affairs, perhaps, the European institutions, something like this. That was my desire and my destiny.
At that time, Europe is how many members?
Well, that was in the 90s.
15?
Yes, about 15 members. That was in the 90s. So I did my first degrees in Paris, and I was lucky enough to be one of the first persons to go on Erasmus mobility for a whole year. I went to the UK, discovered the UK world of higher education.
At that time, European Union member.
Of course, at that time, European Union member, victim of its success in higher education, in the sense that there were hundreds and hundreds of EU citizens studying in each UK university at that point. I remember a number of French, Italians, Spanish people all around. So it was really very interesting. And this is where I met my husband-to-be. Mm-hmm. So I returned to Paris. I finished my undergraduate degrees because these are longer than the UK. And then I went back to do a master degree, so an LLM. And then off to Cyprus for a few years because I wanted to practice probably in the legal field in an international environment, primarily conflict resolution zone, but also, international law and international tax planning and commercial law.
At that time, Cyprus is not a member of the EU, so
and
definitely.
At that time, Cyprus did look more like a so-called offshore center.
Yeah, it was.
So it was very attractive for someone like me with my background, and I knew I wanted to embrace an academic career at that point, but I knew I didn't want it right now, and I knew I didn't want to also embrace PhD studies too quickly. So I came here, and I actually worked for 5 years in one of the largest law firms on the island, so on international commercial law, let's say, in a broad setting, and also European law. I did a lot of, I learned a lot, definitely, and I did a lot of, establishment of business interests, and also looked into the path of Cyprus towards the European Union at that point, because it was already late in the 90s, early in the 2000s. So I knew what I was going to focus on.
Was it difficult for a young lady at that time to travel outside the European space? We both know that Europe was not as freedom of movement as is today, that we take it for granted. So there were a few things. Plus, you were traveling outside of Europe. You were not in experiential concern where you're going. You were going towards more the Middle East, so it's located Southeast Europe. How was the feeling as a young person, as a young woman, going into what is now the corner edge of the European Union?
Yes, and a divided island.
But how was the feeling for you? I mean, did you think you're going to the field? That's what I'm saying.
Yes, so for me, the feeling was perfectly okay. I mean, I was young, adventurous, in love. So, that made perfect sense. If you ask my parents, probably, they were closer to what you're describing. But, I was anyway meant to be on the road. I was anyway meant to embrace an international career due to the nature of my studies. So
because I think the success of the European Union is exactly this.
Yeah.
The capacity and capability for Europeans to travel in different countries within the European spectrum and abroad. Erasmus program mentioned, and adjust to it. Yes.
And not only adjust. I mean, I was lucky enough to be in a position that, first of all, I have to say that, I was very welcome here. I didn't encounter any type of discrimination or any type of intimidation. That must be said. And also the fact that for the European Union, people like me or you are assets in the sense that, we have no borders, no limits. So we can spread what we were born and raised in, even outside of that territorial, let's say, limitation of what is the European Union today, what it was back then. So having EU citizens prior to joining the European Union, having experts, it's something that can actually be very beneficial for all businesses, but also the society as a whole.
I want to ask you something. It seems that your life story, to this extent, as of this moment that we speak, is full of European experiences. I'm making, I'm just opening up a parenthesis. Do you think that this kind of experiences today are felt between European citizens in the Europe of 2024, let's say? Considering all this volatility around us, financial, political, sociological, war in different parts of the world, do you think that this has stopped the Europeans from dreaming Europe as you and I have dreamed so far? Or is this much more a reason to continue and embrace, on the one hand, the realities, but also try to find solutions to these realities?
That's a very good question. And of course, because we both work and also in higher education, we know very well, we have, daily exchanges with youngsters. I have my own children also who are, in that age that they start wondering about traveling and being able to reach out. I have a daughter who studies in the UK, for example. So I think that this has not changed. Even in the UK today, post-Brexit, you still have that possibility of exposure to so many different nationalities and so many different cultures. They are less turned towards the European Union and more turned towards the international world. This is due to the nature of Brexit. But the principle remains the same.
Right.
And I think this principle was also in the existence of our parents' generation, due to the Second World War particularly.
Yes.
So there was also that idea of, not necessarily being able to stay in Europe because of the situation. And this is why, there were a lot of people migrating to the States in particular, but not only. So I think this is repeating itself for every generation, and the opportunities may be different, but the appetite and the desire to learn remains the same.
Although we'll come back to modern Europe, to today's Europe, one of the things that I usually say to our students in generally about Europe is, in order for you to comprehend the totality of the power and the capabilities and the freedoms and the options and the opportunities and the values of Europe, you have to go outside the European Union. In the sense of seeing how people see or judge the European space from being non-Europeans, or wanting to become integrated with European or Euro-Atlantic values in this sense. But I close the parenthesis and I'll come back to the European space asset. But let's go back a bit to your early career. So you are in Cyprus, you've worked 5 years, and then you decide later on to become an academic. So you start your academic career in Cyprus or in France or in Europe. Where do you start?
Yes. So I knew I would become an academic from the moment I entered university. That was a very clear plan. I knew I wouldn't become a practicing lawyer or a judge or anything like this. That's probably because my grandmother was an academic herself. So
and to state, you're a good one too. Not because you're my colleague, but because we had the pleasure to work together before.
Thank you. So yes, I knew I would work for 5 years. That was the exact plan, and I knew that then I would start doing my PhD. So the next question was this question that you asked before, this question of humility. What can an EU citizen located outside of the European Union in an extremely interesting area of the world contribute to society and to the legal culture in that place? So I basically thought it would be best for me to do a PhD, because I was going to do a PhD, to focus on what I knew best, which was European integration process, to be able to have that mutually beneficial exchange between EU citizens and non-EU citizens, people in, people out, people who are trying to get in, people trying to get out. And the main focus was then where to do this and how to do this. So that goes back to the question, where did I start? I was lucky enough to start actually my academic career in Cyprus while doing my PhD. So I did my PhD part-time, which in the end I ended up finishing earlier than most full-time students would do.
Probably because you were working on it too.
Because I knew very well what I wanted to write.
Exactly,
yes. And I was lucky enough to work on the same topic, in the sense that I was actually
empirical capability.
Yes, on the same topics, which was, broadly speaking, the European Union and European integration. So I was lucky to start here, but with the flexibility of being half in Cyprus, half in the UK, because I ended up going back to the UK to do a PhD.
Right.
Yes, so that was the beauty of it. So
and to say, a lot of academics in the UK are still very much in the side of the European things, because Europe as a whole in its integration process always starts from schooling, and it starts from university time. So there were a lot of exchanges between faculty and the capability of different nationalities to also teach and also graduate from third or second or third countries towards their nationality was always an important asset, and I think England had done a very good job with this.
And if I can add something here, so from the perspective of European integration, in the sense that it's also good to be in a non-European state that is on the way, Cyprus had another characteristic which was very important for me at that moment. It was that there was very little higher education in Cyprus at that point. So I found myself also at the beginning of legal education in Cyprus. So that's another
things they're taken for granted
now.
today. Yes.
And of course,
and the options and the abundance of options are there for all students. And I think I mean, one of the things that Cyprus won from its integration to Europe is exactly this: the abundance of choices. Whether this is in education or services or travel or passport power or the capability to speak in multiple languages or to translate elements or to do scientific work from your field to another country. Erasmus program, as you said, that is also inside Europe and outside Europe, that's also important. But let me ask you the following. Cyprus has a very good tendency to offer a very good climate. Did this changing climate, this climate of a country that gives you the abundance of choices between Europe and the Middle East, Europe and Northern Africa, was this also a choice for you? I mean, did you feel the vibes? Because I'm slowly going towards European foreign policy and values and legal terms, but did you feel the vibes that Cyprus is opposite to the Middle East, the same Middle East that we see today, all these things taking place?
Yes, of course, and this is vital to my work in any case. So the PhD ended up being on how to fully integrate Cyprus into the European Union and strategies to enhance Cyprus's EU membership. So you can't do that in a vacuum. No, you can't do that without taking into consideration the neighborhood and good neighborliness.
And it takes decades also to build all those good neighborly relations.
Exactly. So, of course, I am fully aware.
In a divided island, in an unlawfully invited island too, by non-EU member too.
Yes. So, exactly. I had to, as a legal scholar, it was very important to be able to be flexible, not in the terminology, but flexible in the way you see things. Because yes, there are non-EU actors and EU actors. Some EU actors actually become non-EU actors and vice versa. So I was working with models that were interchangeable. In other words, what happens if A and B are within the European Union? What happens if A is in the European Union, B is not, vice versa? What happens if there is a C? And where is that C? Is it in the EU, outside of the EU? So it's good to work with modeling.
Did it help to transpire the European French values into a Cypriot society that was in a constant change towards a goal that was the European Union at that time? Or
probably,
even today?
Yeah, probably, but perhaps culturally or implicitly. Definitely for me, in my own household.
Yes,
That is of course probably.
So you have two cultures in the same household, which is important.
Yes, and probably also at the law school of UCLan Cyprus, there is that multicultural dimension and interdisciplinary dimension, which is probably partly because of who I am. And I think this makes us very rich, also because a lot of the students are from all over the world. So there is this...
this is a distinctive characteristic, I think, in all Cypriot universities, that we have different nationalities.
Yes, a lot
coming in and out, EU and non-EU, which I think gives a very credible choice, Cyprus being an educational hub in its totality.
You're right. It gives legitimacy and credibility. So beyond that modeling, this international relations game, basically, of modeling who is in, who is out, and what happens next. There is the very legal dimension of how to address, the distinctions or differentiation between that part of the territory or that part of the territory of the islands. So, for example, the SBAs or the partition of the islands. So it was very important for me to do in-depth analysis on the various EU law instruments that were created to allow Cyprus to join the European Union as one island, despite the division. So I did a lot of research on that. In other words, what were those legal instruments? How were they inspired? How were they drafted? How are they implemented? Are they implementable? What are the problems? And how we can try to solve the problems on the ground. So this is more of the legal approach.
Is the European Union... I mean, while you're talking, a lot of questions are coming into my mind, theoretical and very political in these respects today. On the ground, do people understand the capacity and the power of the European Union for a possible solution to the Cyprus issue? What is the true guarantee of Europe in a solution of the Cyprus issue? Because you don't have to also only see what the Republic of Cyprus does, but the one who has invaded Cyprus, which is Turkey in this case, who on the one hand utilizes the Cyprus issue to expand its own European integration, that sees as a possible attempt or a goal that they would like to join the EU, but I'm not sure they want the EU under these conditions today. But nevertheless, they do like to trade with the EU, they do like to be approached with the EU, and they do like to negotiate with the EU. Do you think that the European Union is a guarantor, A, of peace, B, of actual practical values that provide safety, not security, safety, in a sense that means that this is European space and we are protected through its own laws, regulation, processes, and practices?
Yes, these are very valid points. So I would say that my answer 10 years ago or 15 years ago when I was doing the PhD was basically to try to challenge exactly what you are describing now, and challenge the lack of political process or the lack of the political progress to the resolution of the Cyprus problem, and to say what matters is what happens on the ground, what matters is what civil society understands the problem to be, and if we cannot find a political solution because of exactly what you described, including the position of Turkey, let's try to find, economically sensible solutions for people to be people and businesses.
What do you mean by financial viability? Because
economically,
economic means that we pay both sides to or incentives to join things, because there's that green zone of community that is recently created by the EU.
So that was what I was trying to advocate 15 years ago, and it's actually what's happening now. So I basically used the rules of the internal market, the EU single market, applied them to Cyprus internally, and showed the exact role of the importance of the European Union and its rules and values, even within a divided Cyprus, and how this could actually lead us very close to full integration. Right. On more economic grounds, let's say, so the four freedoms. Yes. So as a result, I analyzed quite in depth all the regime of the Green Line regulation and other regulations. There is a financial assistance, for example, regulation, and so on and so forth. So that was 15 years ago. Of course, things suffered a setback with the financial crisis. And at this point, there was the financial element in, and it could have been that because the level, the standard of life in the Republic of Cyprus started dropping significantly because of a financial crisis, that could have been a momentum also, to bring closer economically the two sides, at least from a civil society perspective. And it's true that after the financial crisis, the European Union has enhanced its efforts.
Was the other side affected by the economic crisis? That's what you mean? So
they were
probably
affected,
the push to join forces, that's what you mean?
But the Republic of Cyprus, so in other words, the governmental controlled areas of the Republic of Cyprus were most affected by the financial crisis.
Because
we were in the eye of the storm.
Yeah, and you are a member of the EU by that time.
Exactly.
2012, 2013, 14. And
end of the Eurozone.
Yes. And that's important.
Which resulted into the so-called bail-in. So I did a lot of research as well on the bail-in, including via EU-funded projects and so on, to look at the mechanisms that were put in place for Cyprus and the EU level, to look at, how to safeguard human rights, not only depositors and creditors' rights, but generally speaking, rights of ordinary citizens in the eye of the storm. So this was very important. And since then, because we must acknowledge that the Republic of Cyprus has actually done extremely well to get out of the so-called Memorandum of Understanding with international lenders, so it was quite quick to turn around the situation.
Yeah, probably because of the banking element, more than 100,000.
Yes,
the cut.
because of the bailing, yes.
Yeah, yeah.
But we can come back to this probably also because of the golden passports and a few other
Yes.
key economic measures, let's say. But the fact is that, getting out of the crisis was much quicker in Cyprus, of course, than it was, for example, in Greece.
But
of
Cyprus
course,
is smaller.
Yes,
in both size and the
exactly,
GDP creation.
yes.
So
The structural issues were
yeah.
not the same.
Yeah.
So I have to say that I think that after the financial crisis, even since the financial crisis has been addressed, at least on the surface, the European Union has played a renewed role, partly because there was a lot of misconception in Cyprus that the EU is to blame for what happened during the bail-in, and also that so many years after enlargement and so many years after EU accession, we are still as we were in terms of security and safety, and perhaps the lack of security and safety
Yes.
on the island of Cyprus.
Yeah, we will open this chapter once we finish the financial part. Yeah.
Just to finish this part, yes, the European Commission in particular has given a lot of emphasis on building capacity across the divide, across the green line, within specific non-governmental institutions, organizations, and civil society to try to, get things moving. And I can say it because I am the founder of a civil society organization that works on the ground and that works across the divide. And it's called UCLan. It's associated to UCLan Cyprus. So I work with both basically vehicles.
Well, you've done also other things with along UCLan.
Yes.
In terms of European perspectives, and I
Yes.
know that you have been awarded as one of the best options in terms of your capacity building methods.
Yes.
And please tell us about that.
Yes. So basically, yes, we basically managed to scale up a few small projects that started in Cyprus across the divide via the team that works at UCLan, which is also the team that actually works at the School of Law of UCLan Cyprus. But at UCLan we work on a different, from different hats, because we are basically, resident experts. UCLan is a separate legal entity from the university. But what we do via that CSO is that we disseminate our research and science to citizens. And having a CSO to do this is a much better vehicle, because with a CSO you can actually participate to civil society in a different way. So yes,
you call on civil society to participate on attempts, scientific and if you want operational on the ground, to learn more and at the same time educate.
So that's right. And one of those programs, which is a long-standing program of UCLan, which is on social mediation, which is on basically how to resolve conflicts within a social setting or a social environment. It could be across communities and groups. We trained quite a lot of people on the island of Cyprus across the divide. We even took it further than Cyprus with the pandemic. So we decided to react positively to the pandemic, and despite the closure of the checkpoints, for example, in Cyprus, or despite physical barriers put in place for so many people, and other barriers, economic and social barriers for so many people across the world, we decided to continue our activities of enhancing social mediation and training the trainers. So we finished a round of online training the trainers on social mediation program, and then I thought this was worth giving visibility to at the European level, that from a tiny village of Cyprus, because we are located in Pila, UCLan Cyprus and UCLan are hosted in the village of Pila, and I basically took it on myself as a European citizen to apply for the European Citizen Prize on behalf of UCLan, and we actually got it. Yes.
Congratulations for that.
Thank you very much.
I know it's a big step because it guarantees the job well done to be continued.
Yes.
Most importantly.
It is a very symbolic indication of the quality of the spreading of European shared values on the ground. So,
But you also do other things, not only I claim.
yes, of course.
You have a center of excellence.
Yes.
Tell us about that.
Yes, so I am the director of Jean Monnet Center of Excellence for the Rule of Law and European Values, which is also hosted at the School of Law of UCLan Cyprus, together with a team of colleagues, of course. And what we do there is a very different thing, and it's something that is very important for Cyprus and the wider region. We examine some aspects of the rule of law. So we have already, on a scientific level, let's say, we have already delimited what we mean by the rule of law, what aspects are relevant to Cyprus, what aspects are relevant to the wider region, what aspects are relevant to us. And then we couple it with a study of democratic values other than the rule of law, which we tend to find in Europe, so European values. And we actually measure the effectiveness or the upholding or the backsliding of those aspects of the rule of law and European values.
Where are we standing with regards to democratic European values with regards to Cyprus? Considering that I would like to make a small criticism here, we're very pessimistic in the south of Europe, apparently, in southeast Europe even more so.
Yes.
Why are we pessimistic?
Yes. So part of the first part of our job.
Although we are very Europeanized. I mean,
yes, we are.
that's a bit of counterbalance, but yeah,
We
why?
are very Europeanized, and we are actually quite positive, actually, about quite a few aspects of European values. So the first part of our job at the Center of Excellence was actually to answer this very same question. Where do we stand? What do we do right? What don't we do? What do we do wrong? Why is that so? What are the threats that we expose ourselves or we are exposed to in the region? So in terms of European democratic values, there are a number of ways that you can actually identify how well we are doing as a society, or even measure how well we are doing as a society. So we took existing, let's say, indicators and data, and we created our own set of data, or we're in the process of creating our own set of data.
In the societal structures.
In the societal structure, based on what we see as missing. So we are working on filling in the gap. So let me be a bit more specific.
Please.
For example, we know that newly entered EU member states, so let's say the younger EU member states such as Cyprus, but not only Cyprus, they have the tendency to perhaps react more out of external pressure or external shocks. So structural reforms will be underway, provided there is that external pressure that may come from the European Commission, for example, or it could come from the Council of Europe, or it could come from other international organizations. So the way those pressures are imposed is via reporting, monitoring, and so on. So we contribute to this kind of monitoring, reporting at the international level and the European level. And we also complement that reporting by looking at our own societal indicators. So actually, in the next few couple of months, we are going to go out with specifically designed surveys and focus groups for Cyprus on specific issues across several pillars of European democratic values. And we are going to target specific groups, particularly civil society, but not only, also professionals. And so we are going to ask them questions of perceptions of European democratic values in Cyprus. So, for example, how does one participate to a democratic life in Cyprus? So there will be a whole survey on identifying if people understand what it means to participate to public life and what it means to exercise your right to direct democracy, for example. So we are working on that at the Center of Excellence.
I want to open the door to analysis. Considering that, A, we are amidst a lot of wars, in the European periphery, if I can call it like this, whether this is in the north, Ukraine and Russia, Middle East. Now we're opening up also at the Red Sea. Africa is in a damaged situation, especially the northern parts and northwest parts, looking at Libya, looking at Chad, looking at Niger. Financially, there are challenges considering the supply chains, the globality of what the European Union can project. And we constantly request, considering that the elections are up and coming in June 24, we're constantly asking for leadership, effective decision making, and limited bureaucracy. I know that I'm asking a lot of things in a short period of time, but they are somehow interconnected. And while we want more Europe, we want to also have a more active Europe and more simplified Europe, projecting on the one hand security stability, security resilience, and efficacy and capabilities in the European, if you want, social frameworks within the EU projected element. We have illegal migration, we have all these attempts to reconcile, if you want, with realities and find new alliances with non-EU neighboring countries. How do you see the whole spectrum? Because I think these are the main questions that will play a pivotal role in the way that European citizens will make their choices.
Yes.
How do you see, do you agree, do you not agree, maybe on the things that I said? How do you see Europe going into 24 and further?
Yes, these are very valid points. So I don't have a crystal ball.
Yeah, of course. I mean, no, as an analysis, as a
Yes.
scientist, you're directly engaged with Europe.
Yes.
I mean,
So-
I was thinking that since this is societal element, foreign
Yes.
policy may be a societal element because it affects us.
That's very right. So my answer is action. So democratic action. This is my answer. And social
Right.
innovation. So whatever I do, particularly in preparation for the 2024 European parliamentary elections, is geared towards enhancing capacity, civil society's capacity, citizens' capacity, to be able to critically approach those challenges and vote, to express their concerns
Yes.
over those challenges. So
To those who agree and those that disagree,
Yes.
for which reason they agree or disagree.
as long as they participate. So
That's choice number one of Europe. Please vote.
yes.
And I think there's a
First of
campaign
all,
for that.
Yes, that's right. So in the past few months, under CROLEF, under the Center of Excellence, we have held a number of citizens events or citizens-oriented events, if you want, where we even did training on empowering people to participate, empowering citizens to think together, to build together. We had a very beautiful Citizens Festival where we had a number of CSOs working on similar projects coming and discussing their work. We had a number of high-profile speakers coming and speaking to the students on campus. We even had a yoga session because we had difficult
Yes,
conversations
because you
just
have to
before.
Yes, so you have to be active on everything. Yes,
Yes.
athletics
Yes.
with the mind.
Yes.
Yeah, the mind, and the body. Yes.
At the back of our head, the ultimate objective is to try to enhance participation to the
But-
democratic debate.
But my concern is the critics that you hear from people vis-a-vis Europe, although they, as I told you, they're very pessimistic, not on the Europeanized values, but on the capability of Europe to take decisions. And you said it yourself, decisions. So where is the leadership? How do we make it effective? How do we connect with Brussels, being the center point of the European Union? How does Brussels come to the edge corner of Europe, which is Cyprus, which is volatile considering what is happening in the Middle East, considering what's happening in Northern Africa, considering what's happening in the Red Sea?
Yes.
How do we bridge?
How do we bridge the two? There are two things I want to say. First of all, one of the focuses we previously had, last year in particular, was to actually see and discuss with people and equip people to understand how much citizens' empowerment is about and where it stops and where formal institutionalization, whether at the national level or the EU level, has to take on, has to continue. So basically, we train people to demand things in an organized manner, and how to communicate their demands to the local, national, regional, European level. This year we did this again with the Council of Europe. We did a very interesting training on the Council of Europe tools to enhance direct democratic participation. And these are real tools, complex tools that you need to be trained on. Anyone can be trained on. And we had a number of people from municipal authorities, for example, with us, or political life with us. We also had ordinary citizens. Those tools, they are the answer to your question. Those tools, they embed all the levels, including the EU level. So they teach you how to actually be comprehensive, inclusive, including of the higher level that you wish to talk to. So there are many different mechanisms and ways to enhance this, rather than think that, you know, we are far away from Brussels. Geographically, we are far away from Brussels. We are more isolated.
There's no direct flight, just as of yet, with the European Union.
Just as of yet with Brussels, you mean, and Luxembourg?
Yes. With Brussels. I mean, that's an irony in practice, if you think about it.
But that's a symbolic irony, because it's a bad thing, obviously. We definitely need to have a direct contact with Brussels and Luxembourg. However, I think that there are many tools available on direct participation and citizens' participation and empowerment that can mitigate this feeling of distance and remoteness, and this feeling that, you know, we are in the middle of a very difficult area, you know, marked by, as you said before, a number of wars. The ongoing conflicts, whether they are towards the south or towards the east.
Are they going to end soon? I know I'm pushing a bit, but do you think they're going to end soon? Because I don't think so.
No, probably not. And they are of direct relevance to Cyprus, obviously, for a number of reasons.
Which is an EU member, which is affected, and solidarity clause.
Yes. So not only is there a humanitarian dimension, which is absolutely tragic, but there is also this dimension that a lot of illicit activities have been disrupted, and they tend to pass closer to Cyprus or in different routes that somehow involve Cyprus. So this is something not to be ignored, particularly because of the Green Line. And this is something that we need to raise awareness about, and we need to be able to answer. And there we need governments to take decisions.
Do we have strong leaders, without mentioning names? Do you think that the potentiality of younger leaders, such as the new Prime Minister of France, to be a choice? I mean, he's not the first one.
No.
The Prime Minister of Iceland.
Yes. Whom I have met.
Right.
She's amazing.
A lady, young, with young ideas. She was scrutinized for her ideas, for her way of living mostly.
That's right.
Which I don't agree really, because a young person should be young, should be at the age where the decade that they are into. He's not the first one, but France is a model power, a European power. What are the messages? The early messages at the time of the recording, the early messages. But what are the messages, and what are the anticipation? What are the expectations? How does the French community react to it so far? What do you expect as a European citizen and as a French citizen also?
We have a number of says in French philosophy and you know, among French/European thinkers, because we are talking about, you know, European thinkers coming from different EU member states and non-EU member states. Usually, you know, age doesn't necessarily have to do with, you know, experience and expertise and potential. And I think the message is strong. The message is that we are talking to young people, and therefore we place someone who can talk to you.
Right.
I think the message is quite clear.
This is the picture that comes from his political communication on his accounts, social media accounts.
Yes. So he has
as a minister of education, I think he was, right?
Yes, he was minister of education because he had to step in.
Right.
I mean, he used to be spokesman as well. I mean, he's already a quite experienced politician. Now, he is an asset, and he has an asset because he's young. It's not sufficient.
Right.
But 6 months before the European parliamentary elections, given the political landscape in France, which, by the way, is not too different from the political landscape we have in Cyprus, with the rise of the extremes, I would say that it's a strong signal, and it's probably one of the last
so they will
cards
play, it will play a pivotal role in the European election somehow.
I think
because
so.
You just mentioned something, I don't want to go into depth, but I also believe that there's some extremes are on the rise, considering that they're exploiting the volatility of our societies as we are right now.
Yes.
Stephanie, I could go on and on for hours with you and picking your mind, and these are amazing analysis and great positions. I have a last question for you before we wrap up. It is more related to the potential and the forecasting and the identity as a European Union country of Cyprus, and the potentiality of the solution of the Cyprus issue. One of the things that I usually state is I'm always wondering what will be Cyprus recognized as post-conflict resolution, actual conflict resolution. Because every European country has its own identity for which it was into. Cyprus, although a member of the EU, is also connected with the fact that it's the sole divided island with the last remaining divided capital.
Yes.
So it's a characteristic of acknowledgement.
Yes.
What happens after the momentum builds, society rebuilds, financially this will bring possibly a momentous opportunity for Cyprus to be, for politicians to be involved. The morality and the ethics will be high or strong, or there will be institutions being involved into the reconstruction. What will be Cyprus known in the global map, in the European map, as of?
That's a very good question, and this is something that we all have to work on for this to materialize. So, obviously, Cyprus is an extremely old place. A place, an island of many occupations, many invasions, and a lot of history, a lot of culture. So this is one of the strong
from Hellenistic periods.
From Hellenistic periods.
And all the empires that passed through.
Yes. So this is something that is there and will remain, and that must be valued even more. We are doing.
So respect to multinational culture, multi-religious elements, characteristics, global economy, European economy.
The geopolitical situation
rule of law,
as well.
democracy.
Definitely. So that's the first thing.
Okay.
The second thing is, of course, there is a lot of talent on this island. And there is a lot of creativity on this island.
You're looking at R&D? R&D innovation?
Foreign direct investments.
FDIs.
And, development of infrastructures. Yes, global, yes, why not? I'm thinking about sectors like shipping, for example. I mean, these are sectors that are, horizontal, so they catch all areas of employment and employability and markets. This is something that needs to be enhanced.
Home shipping, however, a direct link with mainland Europe, such as in Greece, for example, took them after 20 years.
Yes.
For the connection to take place, which is an extremely good element.
Yes.
But it took 20 years.
We can probably do better.
What about a hub of civilization? What about a place of mediation of conflicts?
Exactly. So there is also that aspect. So the hub of services, whether it's towards well-being or healthy aging,
right,
or whether it's a hub of higher education.
So options to do either or.
Yes, right. And of course conflict resolution. So
and you said healthy living, considering the good weather, the clean food, and the surroundings.
Yes.
Right.
And conflict resolution, I believe in that very much as well. Because of where we are located, the university, we do get very, very often visitors from all over the world.
Yeah, because of Pilla.
Yes,
because of the Green Line.
because of where we are. So it's
in the
Pila,
Green Line.
it's the buffer
yes.
zone,
Yeah, the
it's
buffer
the
zone,
Green
yes.
Line, it's the SBAs
Yes,
nearby,
yes,
and
yes,
it's the island of Cyprus more specifically. And they come to us, of course, because, not only do we have the university there, which is, it means an educationally solid, robust
Yes.
British university in the heart of a mixed village, with very vibrant civil society life and student life. We do a lot for the local and the surrounding
You're offering
communities.
to the local community.
Yes, also
like
via
all
ICLAIM.
universities that they do, right?
Yes,
I think
exactly.
hence also, the university that I'm located at,
Yes.
Neapolis University, there's in the other side of Cyprus, which is in Paphos, another
Yeah.
place also of giving back to the local community.
It's very important, and
Yes.
this is something which is, contribution to society for higher education institutions is very important.
Mm-hmm.
We have a slightly different approach because we are located
On the edge.
Green Line.
Yes.
So that makes us, more likely to be also very involved in bicommunal
Right.
projects or intercommunal projects. So we have that sensitivity towards multicultural
Right.
activities. And of course, we have a number of civil society organizations that are associated to the university, such as ICLAIM, as I said, which is actually quite well known already now. We went to the UN
Indeed,
with
indeed.
ICLAIM, we went to the Council of Europe with ICLAIM, to the Fundamental Rights Agency of the European Union with ICLAIM. So, and we have EU funding
Right.
from the European Commission at ICLAIM as well, including for bicommunal projects. So that's very important. And conflict management is certainly an area of interest. Definitely for us, we have an expertise in conflict management in many different ways. I'm a commercial and registered mediator in the Republic of Cyprus, but we actually train students to become, mediators. We train them to become arbitrators. And we have that wider approach towards conflict management, as you said, which is conflict resolution via social mediation and peace mediation, international mediation. So that's definitely, I think, something that is very important for Cyprus.
Right.
There are
And they could
efforts
export
made. Yes.
the understandings and the processes, considering the fact that we will not see peaceful
Yes.
resolution of conflicts all around soon enough, I think. But,
For this, Marius, however, you need full upholding of the rule of law
absolutely.
and strong institutions.
Absolutely. You said strong institutions. We said about mediation, we said strong institutions. Tell me a few last things about strong institutions. You mentioned it, it's important. What do you mean by strong institutions? Considering that we're going to European elections 24, and with that would be the very, very last question to you.
Thank you, Marie. So strong institutions are essential to upholding the rule of law. What do we mean by that? We mean, and also when I say upholding the rule of law, I mean also rule of law and other democratic values that we share in Europe, more, and maybe also more widely, not only Europe. So an example of this would be the way decisions are made at the legislative level, at the executive level. What is the weighting? How much is done at the executive level? How much is done at the executive level? So, in other words, who rules? Do we rule by decree? In other words, do we rule more out of what the executive wants to do? For example, in times of COVID or financial crisis, we were, in a state of ruling by decree. This is not a good way to uphold the rule of law.
Not a European way.
It's not a democratic way of upholding the rule of law. A democratic way of having strong institutions
Participation.
is participatory institutions. In other words, as I said before,
The ability to take collective decisions, and at a lower level, which
Yes.
is advisory to the
yes,
main one. Yeah.
and engage directly with civil society and the citizens as much as possible. So there are so many different ways that there can be engagement before decisions are taken. And this is very important for all branches of power.
Right.
Now, for the judiciary, which is the third branch of power, conflict management And dispute resolution means strong institutions, also in terms of delivery of justice.
Right.
So if we have structural problems in the judiciary, if we have deficiencies in the way the courts function, because of the backlog of cases, for example, or because we are missing a number of courts, for example, if we don't have a well-functioning commercial court, how can we be an international conflict management center in the world?
Right.
So this is also the case, and that's what we mean by strong institutions. We mean fair, open, transparent, and efficient institutions.
So, to wrap up, dear Stephanie, thank you very much for joining us today at Prime Analysis at Strategy International. As you are well known and being part also of Strategy International as an advisory fellow with us. Strategy International aims to give this potentiality from the European point of view to a more globalized point of view. And I thank you very much for the time that you have provided. I know you're extremely busy with all the things you're doing. We are colleagues for many years. We're good friends. And I thank you for coming here at Prime Analysis. And I reserve the right to ask you again to come at least one more time to us and more to discuss even more specific topics as we progress. But thank you very much for your time, dear Stephanie.
Thank you, Marius. The pleasure was mine. It was lovely to be able to chat about my own path, but also about so many very important issues. And yes, let's do another round whenever we can.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you all for watching another episode of Strategy International's Prime Analysis. Please like, share, subscribe, and follow in our social media. My name is Dr. Marius Eftimiopoulos, and I was your host at Prime Analysis. And until next time, remember, impact makes a difference.